in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Tech Tuesday presentation. Behind the scenes here at EPM Live, how our databases and data flow. We have a few logistics to cover before we get started. Everyone will be muted for the duration of this presentation. However, should you have any questions, I will be monitoring the chat module, so please feel free to chat with me there. This webinar is being recorded and will be distributed a little later this afternoon, along with the PDU information, which Christina will also show at the end of her presentation, so you can get that number a little earlier as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our EPM Live technical trainer, Christina Goley.
Hello everybody, welcome. My name is Christina Gully and I'm a technical trainer here with EPM Live. As Morgan had stated, today I'll be reviewing a little bit of EPM Live behind the scenes. We'll be focusing specifically on databases and data flow. Now here are the objectives for today's webinar. First we'll review what databases there are and how they all kind of work together. We'll review the data flow specific to reporting, as well as our reporting refresh. We'll also go through the data flow for a timesheet process, as well as our portfolio tools. And by portfolio tools, I'm referring to our enterprise portfolio planning tools, such as our resource planning and cost planning. And then we'll also touch on the EPM Live timer. Now, the beauty about all of this information that I'm sharing today is that most of this is already set up and working out of the box. What I'm going to go ahead and be reviewing, though, is to explain how data is flowing behind the scenes, so you can understand what's taking place when an end user enters information into the system, and then they're able to then use and view that information elsewhere in the system, whether via reports or our various tools and features, etc. So the first thing here I'd like to focus on is we have our EPM Live site collection, which, as many of you know, EPM Live is built on SharePoint as a platform. So all of the information in EPM Live is really in a SharePoint site collection. Now, as any data that gets saved into EPM Live, such as list and library data, items, content basically, all goes into the SharePoint content database, as you can see here with number 2. So EPM Live allows all of that normal SharePoint functionality to take place. And then now the rest of these are additional enhancements that EPM Live has done beyond that SharePoint content database. You can see here with this number 3 going down to our EPM Live database. This is also referred to as our timesheet database because one of the main functions of it is that timesheet data is saved in time phased, so you can see what time is saved on various work items, and you can see it over the course of time. So how much time was submitted and saved for a project last week, last month, last year, etc. So besides the timesheet data going into that EPM Live database, we also have a number of other functionality and features, such as our EPM Live timer and the queue associated with that timer. And I'll go into more detail about timesheets in just a few minutes. Now, if we take a look over here at number 4, data is going from EPM Live into our Portfolio Engine database. And the Portfolio Engine database is specifically used for all of the EPM Live cost data and resource capacity planning data. So associating your resources, allocating them to various projects or other items in the system, or associating costs such as budgets, actual costs, doing analysis of what did you budget versus what's actually being spent versus what benefits are coming in. Now, if we look at all of the next one here we have, now in addition to, this is number 5 here, in addition to our SharePoint content database, we also have what's referred to as the EPM Live content database, which is also referred to as reporting or reporting database. And the way that that works is all of the data that can be saved in EPM Live can also be saved into our reporting database. So we can do reporting on all of our various EPM Live data. And I'll go into more detail about reporting, but what you can really do is focus on live data as well as snapshot data. Now, as I had mentioned, we have our timesheet data as well as our portfolio engine database data. The data from both of those databases also flows here into our reporting database that you see here, number 6 and 7. So when it's all said and done, all of our data is available here in this reporting database. So we can pull out various reports and any analysis that we need to do, because all the data is then stored in this one central reporting database. Now, as we're talking about reporting, the way that this works from a technical perspective and how you can modify this from settings is that we have our EPM Live reporting solution. All of our various data is saved into different list apps. For example, all of our project data goes into the Project Center. All of the various tasks and project schedules go into Task Center, issues into the Issues list app, etc. You can see there's a lot of pre-built list apps available here. And with EPM Live, it's a very flexible tool. So if you have any other list apps or apps that you've installed, you can also then have those added here and report on the data in those list apps as well. Now for any list app that is mapped, and I'll show you in a few minutes when I go into the EPM Live site how to map your various list apps. Every list app that's listed here, there's 2 tables that get created in the EPM Live reporting database. One is a live table, and one is a snapshot table. Now the live table is, as you can imagine, live data. So as any items are added, updated, or deleted, the data in those specific items are immediately reflected in the corresponding table. So for example, if I create a new issue and I hit save, as soon as that item is added into the site, it's also then added into the database so I can report on that new issue created. Now the snapshot table allows for snapshots to be taken, and this allows for trend reporting. So you can see what various data looked like over the course of time, in addition to just the live data as how it is right now. Now besides just these individual list apps that are being mapped, we also have other reporting tables that are available for reporting purposes. They're SQL tables on that reporting database. And those include the work table for all the various work list apps, our EPG tables, which are those tables that are pulling from the portfolio engine database. And again, those are for the portfolio tools for resource and cost planning. And then we also have our TS data table. TS stands for timesheet, so it's all the timesheet data that also then is getting mapped into that reporting database. Now when I talk about work lists, what I mean here is that we have various list apps in the EPM Live system. Some of them might be task type lists, such as you can see here on this column, the second column over, such as Task Center, the backlog, service tasks. Those are items that fit within a schedule, for example. We also have other types of lists using our work list definition. Those are work types such as issues, risks, to-dos, etc. Any list app that you designate as a work list app, all of the items and data in those list apps will then also be added to the one work list table. And what that allows you to do is run a report on any work items without needing to manually go in and designate every time for each individual report. So it makes doing custom reports that much more streamlined and efficient. Now when I go into the EPM Live reporting settings, I have one of my options here is our refresh schedule for the reporting refresh. And the reporting refresh is something that you would schedule to run once a day. You can see my example here, this one's being run at 11 p.m. each night. There's a few things that reporting refresh does every day. The first thing is it updates the reporting tables for the timesheet data in the reporting database. It also updates or populates the EPG tables for those portfolio tools. So that's part of the process where all of the data gets updated into that reporting database. It also updates our security table so we can be sure of which users are within each security groups. And then the other thing that the reporting refresh does is it goes through and it deletes various lists or sites that have been deleted. So the only exception to that live table is that when new items or items are added or deleted, they get updated in the live table. But if you were to delete an entire list or an entire site, those get held off on being deleted until this refresh runs. And it helps with performance. So if you're deleting a large amount of content, it gets held off until this time. So it's recommended that this timer or that this reporting refresh get run at a time when your system or not a lot of users are in there, when it's idle or evening or what have you. Now when users enter their time into their timesheet and they hit save, and then the management can go in and run a report and see what kind of time has been entered and saved on all of their various projects. There's a lot that actually happens in between those two steps. And so here we can see kind of the 5-part process. Now this is the similar diagram that I initially showed, but now we're going to be looking at it specifically with regards to timesheets. So let's say, for example, we start here with number 1. A user is logged into EPM Live, and they save and submit their time into their timesheet. Now, as soon as that time is approved hours, and you can either have this be on an auto approval, or you can use a manual approval where the timesheet manager says that they approve that time. As soon as the hours go from a saved to approved state, then the hours get stamped into this EPM Live database, as I was mentioning, also referred to as our timesheet database. So the time now exists here in this timesheet database. Now part 2 of this process is if you are using our portfolio tools for resource, capacity, and cost planning, you may want to then be able to associate the cost associated with the time spent on a project or on other items. So part 2 here is we have what's called the timesheet cost timer. And this can be set to run, again, similar to the other timer. You pick a time of day or night and you have it run, and it goes once a day at that time. That timesheet cost timer takes all of your timesheet hours from the EPM Live database and it pushes them into the Portfolio Engine database. And that copies over the hours. So once it gets to the Portfolio Engine database, it's still in the format of hours. And that takes us to part number 3 here. In part number 3, once we're within the Portfolio Engine database, then those hours are converted to costs. Because in the system, every resource has an associated rate. So the number of hours from the timesheet multiplied by that resource's rate gives you the cost. And that's done via post-cost values. It's one of the features within the EPM Live site settings page. Next, we have the reporting refresh. As I mentioned, the reporting refresh has a few main items that it takes care of. And these are 2 of them here. It takes all of the time data from the timesheet database and it publishes it into the TS data table. So we have updated timesheet data in that table. It also takes the data from our Portfolio Engine database, such as that resource cost and the cost associated to those hours, and also pushes that data into the EPG table. So in part 4 here, we have the data being pushed from both of those separate databases into our reporting database. Once the data is in that reporting database, then we can run our various reports. So we can see all of our resource cost data, we can see the timesheet hours, etc. So we can begin to look at what did we actually spend on a project or on another item based on the hours and then the cost associated to those hours. Now the next topic here with regards to our portfolio tools and how the data flows between the Portfolio Engine database and our EPM Live site app. As I've mentioned a couple times, these are specifically with regards to our cost and resource planning. So for example, we have our resource capacity, and that's our resource planner. We also have our cost data, such as our cost planner, or then the resource costs. And then we also have some analysis tools, such as our optimizer, or also our cost modeler, our resource analyzer, and our cost analyzer. So data is flowing in between these two systems, and a lot of what EPM Live is set up out of the box has everything mapped so that data can easily flow back and forth. Now this next slide here is going to show you a lot of information explaining how data is going back and forth. Now I want to have this table in here for you all to see today. I'm not going to go through every single item, but this information is explained as well in detail in our guide and whatnot that we can follow up on. But for you to be aware, in general, we have various features of EPM Live and how those features are then synced with the Portfolio Engine database. So for example, I'll start with just the first couple of rows here. We have a list app item in EPM Live, such as a project or an application. And in the Portfolio Engine database, we have a list that's called Portfolio Items. And you can see here that if you create the item in EPM Live, such as you create a project in EPM Live, it automatically syncs that item into Portfolio Engine. So because you created the project in EPM Live, it synced it to the Portfolio Engine database, and you can then begin to do your cost and resource planning on that item via the Portfolio Engine database. The same goes with our EPM Live resources in the EPM Live resource pool. There's also a resources table on that Portfolio Engine database. When you create the resource in EPM Live, it automatically syncs it over to the Portfolio Engine database. So there's nothing additional that needs to be done here. This is just explaining how the items are automatically synced, so you have this going back and forth with the data for all of your resource and cost planning and analysis tools. And then as you can see here, there are a number of other features and areas of the tool. So if you were to be going in and doing more customization, ways that when you do customization, and specifically new departments, new roles, new custom fields, etc., how those new fields, new departments, new roles also get mapped over to the Portfolio Engine database. Next we have our EPM Live timer and the timer queue. Now this timer has two main functions. The timer is, again, also run once a day, and you would set this to run in a time of day when your system is idle or your users aren't actively in the system. You can also run it on demand at any time. Now there's two main functions here that the timer does. The first one is that it updates all items based on the today function. So for example, if an item is due on Wednesday, if you log in on Tuesday, you'll see that, oh, it's due tomorrow. However, if you logged in on Friday, you would then see, oh, well, now this item is overdue because now it's 2 days past due. So it's that timer that updates all the items based on the today function, so you have an updated status based on due. It also goes through and recalculates all of our fields that are the total roll-up fields. For example, if you want to see all active issues for a given project, or all overdue tasks for a given project, this timer goes through and refreshes and recalculates whatever the total roll-up is counting, and then it gives you your updated value or KPI indicator within that those various list apps. And I'll show you an example of what this looks like in just a minute. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and switch over to my EPM Live site. Here I'm logged into EPM Live. And most of the topics that we've just reviewed, I'm going to go ahead and show you how some of the data and how some of that process works. And I'll be focusing a lot on issues as an example. But the concept that I'm describing here can be applied to pretty much any list app or most of the various types of content throughout EPM Live. So for example, I'm going to go into my Issues list app by selecting Issues on my Quick Launch here. I can see I have a few issues here listed in my List app, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my settings for this List app. So I go to my List ribbon tab, and then I select List Settings. Here under the General Settings heading, I'm going to go ahead and select General Settings EPM Live. This is a custom EPM Live settings page. And then if I scroll all the way down towards the very bottom of this general settings section, there's a few features I want to highlight here. The first one is Enable Timesheets. By enabling timesheets, this allows me to track time on the items that are entered in this particular list app. So in this example, the Issues list app. And that allows so that when I have my users enter time on their issues, then they can save and submit those issues, and then we can go through that timesheet data flow process that I was just describing. Here we have the Enable Work List features. By checking this box here, this Issues list app, there are a number of different event handlers and other types of actions that take place, but one of which is that this particular list app gets added to that work table in the reporting database. So if I want to do a report on all work, it will now include any issues as work because this feature here, the Enable Work List feature, is enabled by being checked. And then also I have here my Enable Reporting checked. So by having this checked here, this means that now issues there'll be a live issues table as well as a snapshot issue table within the EPM Live reporting database. So I can begin to either run our existing reports or even create new custom reports on the data from the Issues list app. I haven't made any changes here, so I'll go ahead and select Cancel. Next, I'll go ahead and go back to my Issues list app. And now I can go ahead and go into my reporting settings a little bit, and I'll show you how that Issues list app is now mapped based on that setting being checked. I go to my Site Actions drop-down menu and then select Site Settings. And here under the Enterprise Reporting heading, I have Reporting Settings as well as Report Library. So here I'll select Reporting Settings. And there I see that my Issues list app is listed there. And so I know I have a table for live issues as well as a table for doing snapshots. So at any time I could come in and do a snapshot of this Issues list app if I wanted. I could also schedule snapshots to run as well. And you can see here there are a number of other list apps that are being mapped to the reporting database. Next, I'll go back to my Site Actions, Site Settings menu. And the next point I do want to highlight is indicating how our site is being connected to that reporting database. So if I go to our report library here, this is where we have all of our SQL Server Reporting Services, or SSRS reports, being housed here within these various folders. This folder here, though, is for our data sources. So if I open this, I can see that this site, my CW Industries, is connected here to this data source, my EPM Live Report DB. And that's specifically the reporting database that's for this particular site collection. Now every one of my reports in my report library is using this EPM Live Report DB as its data source. So that way when data gets entered into my EPM Live site, that particular database gets updated. And then if I run a report, the report itself will also be updated. And when we want to look at our reports, for example, we can go here into the Reports page by selecting Reports in the Quick Launch. I have a number of dashboards and list views and dashboards and whatnot available and different charts from this reports page. And now as soon as my SSRS items load, I can then run any report that's launching from my reporting database. So I'll go ahead and expand this here. And let's say, for example, I want to look at my project issues. I can expand that, and then I can go ahead and see project issues by project, for example. And now as an end user or a manager, let's say I want to review what kind of issues we have going on right now, I can go ahead and select all my 2 projects right here that I want to review. And let's say I want to see all my various available statuses. And now I can see that I have an issue for this bootcamp project as well as a couple for iBlade. Now, if as soon as a user were to go in and create another new issue, because the data in the reporting database gets updated live, as soon as I would go in and run this report again, it would automatically include the up-to-date data, the additional issues or updated issues or what have you. And then when I'm all done with that report, I can just go ahead and close out this opened up window, and it takes me back to my reports page. Now we also have another type of report, that's our Excel report. And that works very similarly to our SSRS reports. It uses our reporting database as its data source. So I'm going to go ahead and expand here my Excel reports. And I'm going to go to All Documents. And the report that I specifically want to launch is my Timesheet Analyzer. So I'll go ahead and open that in Microsoft Excel. And so I can see here my report. I have, for example, some data saved up until last week. And I can come up here to my data, and I can look at my data connections. And here's where I can see that my reporting database, this RPT, that's my reporting database for my site. All data is going into that database, into specifically this RPT TS data table. So as I was mentioning, all the timesheet data goes into that TS data table, so I can then run reports, and it'll give me all of my timesheet data. And that's how I can then see all of my time phase hours per project or per item throughout the system. And the last thing I do want to highlight here with regards to the items that we've just been reviewing from the timer perspective is that it updates the items with regards to the due status as well as the total roll-ups. So here I'm on my project center. I put projects in the quick launch, and I can see, for example, this column here for active issues. This is a total roll-up field. So I can see here I have 2 active issues for this iBlade project and 1 active issue in Bootcamp. And then if we were to have additional issues added, as soon as that timer runs, then this field will get updated as well. So as I've mentioned, there's a lot of these different timers and features that you can schedule to run, and these are all items that are getting handled behind the scenes. And for the end users, you can go in, you can update your items, you can add your issues, then you can go and run reports on them. And all the data is flowing behind the scenes very efficiently. But now you have a better idea of how the data is flowing and what is actually causing data to move and when. So I do want to highlight here we have EPM Live University. EPM Live University is available for all of our customers with Premier Success. We have all of our available training videos, labs, exams, as well as live Q&A sessions available. So this is a great resource for all of our training materials available to our customers and their users. If you have any questions or want to contact us, you can see our URL here for the training site specifically on our EPM Live website. And I do also want to highlight our EPM Live user conference called Impact 2013. Please note that we do have early bird pricing, but it's only through the end of this month, which is tomorrow, July 31st. So we do encourage you to sign up right away. It's going to be held at the beautiful Hotel Del Coronado in San Diego, which is just a gorgeous setting, and we are so excited to be there. The dates are November 7th through 8th with an additional optional day of training on November 6th. So you can see here the website to sign up and get all the information about the speakers, the various training topics, all of the information. So you can go ahead and check that out. And then, of course, if you do sign up, let them know that Christina Williams had referred you on that site, on the site as well when you sign up. So for those of you who are looking for the PDU information for this webinar, you can see the numbers listed here, 2750-073013. I thank you for your time, everybody, today. I look forward to seeing you on another webinar soon, and hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.